Hey guys, welcome back to WP Development's YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the race truck with the 68 in it. The Mission Impossible is what I call it. We're going to give you a little information on, our warranty, our 800, 900,000 and Extreme Series 68 RFEs, kind of some of the things that we do inside there that are a little different for the different horsepower levels, and our sponsors. How this thing starts up and runs and goes down the track and sets world records for the fastest 68 RFE.
If you ask anyone listening to it, would you still original human fossil, the universal answer would have been no. Yeah, everything.
68 RFEs are obviously, you're watching this video because you might have had a problem or you want to see kind of the things that we've designed and developed over the years, but they have a very big tendency to have the name of high failure, right? So what we do with this truck in the background, some of you know it, some of you have probably never seen it, is we test and develop new products and put as much power basically as we can to it and see how far we can go with the build lists that we sell to you guys, right? So we'll install, the billet input shafts that we sell in our 68 RFEs, billet center supports, different clutch stack ups. This is a very high tech computer system called a Motec. We actually have a lot of data internal on the transmission itself, which has helped us design and develop all the way into like the manual valve body design, which is pretty much how this truck is operating is the 68 RFE manual valve body. Um, so kind of get into this, like the 68 RFE has so many failure points that we were called crazy for trying to put over 2,000 horsepower to it, which is basically the fuel to my fire, right? Like if somebody tells me we can't do something, we're going to keep trying until we figure it out. And that's what we have done. Um, the 68 RFE, we've kind of touched base in the converters and the sprag failures, but there's overdrive failures. There's a lot of different failures that we had to overcome, in order to hold some of you competition goers. So whether you're sled pulling, drag racing, dirt dragging, those are all things that we have a lot of customers out there doing with the 68 that was known to be a big old giant pile, right? So we had a lot of work to do. We've been doing this for and at this extreme for the last about 3 years, as to where we found out how many Tesla does a solenoid in a 68 RFE pull. Tesla is the measurement of force and electromagnetic field. I mean, we have went and dug every inch of this thing and found problems of parts that we were using and had to overcome those problems. We've also, with the end pressure data logging system that we have, so each time each clutch is enabled, we actually get pressure data of that exact clutch so we can see how long did it take to apply, how much psi is in that clutch circuit itself, how long did that take to come off. So in the say like our higher horsepower builds, I would say in the 800 series and above. So we have like the 800, we have a 900 series, we have 1,000 series, and then we have like basically what's in this. It's a one-off custom. As much as you can do to a 68 RFE, that is what we got. So some ways we went about making this 68 RFE hold the horsepower and abuse some of these guys are doing and ourselves, was the in-depth data logging side. So without data, we can't fix anything, right? And I think that's where a lot of people um, that are missing that key item is under power. What is this thing doing? How is it reacting? And how many passes can I get out of this part at this pressure? As how many amps are these solenoids pulling? If you get a piece of trash in that solenoid, is that what's causing it to slow down the shift? So all of those things we have very in depth data logging and we review those steps a lot. So to the point where we have this data that we can put on a screen and we can tell you if there is a clutch going away or if that clutch has been the same throughout, 20 passes. So on this specific one here, it is technically our manual valve body setup. We do have a trans blanket on this because we really don't know what this thing was going to do or if the case was going to fail on us, at with a trans brake leave, which we are the only ones that have, that capability right now. So, when I told people that we had that option, they all looked at me really crazy. They're like, man, that thing's going to just explode. Luckily, we have zero case failures. The one thing that we did have to overcome that was very, very hard was a cavitation issue based off of the RPMs that we turned. So that took us around 8 or 9 revisions. Most of you guys aren't going to get in the RPM range we run on this. We are in the our hard limiter is set at 6,250 RPMs. We try to keep that shift right there around 5,900 to 6,000 RPMs to kind of keep this thing alive and happy. That's not something you're going to see in a typically even more extreme street truck. You guys are probably 5,000 RPMs and below. That's fine. But just knowing that that cavitation issue is there and is starting at the 4,500 to 4,700 RPM range, we were determined to figure that out. It did take us quite a few tries. I think it was 8 or 9 tries before we got that cavitation issue figured out that we could see in the logs. But the reason it took us so long is when we do something like this at this extreme, we can't just go through and throw the book at it and try to uh, decide, what actually fixed it. So each time we go and we make a change, we can only do one change at a time. And each time we did make a change, we seen an improvement each time as we went on. So we knew we were helping it along each way, but you can't just throw all 9 things that you had ideas of doing at once because then you don't have the data to show, okay, this gained me, netted me 200 RPMs or this netted me 400 RPMs or whatever in the log. So it gets very tedious on this stuff. Um, it we When I had this as a test truck in the past, some of my other crazy ideas that we've done with it, we already had a divorce transfer case on this one. And the pure fact of the matter is, we wanted to make something that was very easy to service. So, our company does, transmissions. So, this is our test and development vehicle. We wanted to make sure that if we did have a failure, that we weren't working all night trying to get a transmission out and in. So, we did a what they consider a divorce transfer case, which means we have a shaft that goes on the back of the transmission and it drives our transfer case. They are not mated to each other like your factory. So when we go to pull a transmission in something like this, we don't touch the drive shafts, the transfer case, none of that. We pull one shaft in the middle between the transmission and transfer case, drop that out. We pull the unit down itself with, 6 converter bolts, the bell housing bolts, and some coolers and electronic connections, and we pull that thing out. It should take around 10 to 15 minutes. It usually takes longer to jack it up than it does to get this thing out. We did that just because we knew we were going to have, problems designing and developing product on this thing, to keep you guys from having to do that, right? So a lot of people are a lot of people come to me and they say, "Well, we know you build like racing transmissions, but I don't need a racing transmission. I need one for my daily driver that I'm going to be towing my camper with." And it, I have to explain to them that, what we do in this isn't technically just for you guys out there doing sled pulls, dirt drags, drag racing, burnouts, whatever. everything pertains to the 68 RFE in itself. So, you know, we have certain clutch stack ups that we run in this that can be the same clutch stack up and drum assembly as we would run in your 600 horsepower, 68 RFE that's pulling your camper through the mountains. That amount of abuse, believe it or not, is sometimes the same strain that this thing puts on it. So if you're, wide open throttle, pulling a heavy load going up a mountain, hit a bump, that's probably the same initial jolt that we hit this thing with at, 2000 plus horsepower. So to be able to do that on our own equipment is a huge advantage for us. And being able to have the time to develop and design these things is also another huge advantage for us. But that is how we were able to, configure the 68 RFE and have one of the best on the market. um, Without that data, I mean, we would just be throwing darts at the wall, and whatever came back, we would do, failure analysis or something on and be like, well, we could try this, but we don't like to try on other people's stuff. We like to do it in house. Um, whether it's in this or on our transmission dyno or on our valve body dyno or something like that, we always like to have something tested before, we can release it and make sure that it's absolutely perfect for everybody. So another thing I wanted to touch up on was the differences that we have, starting at our 800 series. I would say that's more so some of our where our performance builds start, all the way up to our extreme series. This would be considered the extreme series. Let's start at the 800. So when I recommend an 800, it's somebody that has, a bigger turbo and bigger injectors. CP3 injectors, turbo. Around that 800 horsepower mark, they're probably going to occasionally, pull their trailer or, you know take it to a sled pull, dirt drag it, do burnouts. Um, so that setup is virtually very similar to the clutch stack up we would run in something in the extreme side. So what I tell people is we can never overbuild the transmission for your application. You could have a completely stock truck and I could throw 1,000 series transmission in there and it would never affect, the shift quality or anything of that nature. It would not hurt it. You can always overbuild and underdeliver in the horsepower. That is never going to be a problem. So back in the day, these people would build 1,000 horsepower transmission, and the way they would drill the holes for the shift firmness and the lockup firmness and the pressure and stuff like that was all done mechanically in a valve body. Well, now with the 68 RFE, everything is electronic. So if we want a more firm shift or a locked shift at wide open throttle, that's all done in an ECM TCM calibration. So that's, nothing that we do on our end, but the tuners that you guys choose to work with. So in the 800 series, that one's going to be for you guys with just, I would say a 472 is about the biggest I would go. That should net you 850. You're pushing the 900 horsepower. Then we step up to the 900. So the difference between the 800 and 900 is we add a billet center support. So the billet center support theory is, they have clutches that are inside that billet center support or factory center support and steels. And as those things are loaded, that also, the more power it can start to dig into the aluminum casting of the center support, which obviously, if you have little grooves in there and you go to apply it with a piston, they're already loaded into that groove, it's going to slow down the apply. So the more power we put to the 4C clutch, which is what's in that drum, in the center support, is the harder it's going to dig into that drum assembly. Once it gets those shelves in there, it will slow down the apply and it could possibly lead to failure of the 4C clutch because it took longer in order for it to engage. So when we go to the 900, we know you're going to be beating on it even more. That's going to have a bigger turbo. You're probably going to be over like 100% over injector, at 100 or bigger percent over injector. Um, we definitely want that steel center support in there to keep those grooves out. It does also add one 4C clutch in there as well. We jump up to our 1000 series, we start getting into a lot of big power. So a lot of people, have a goal of 1,000 horsepower, and they don't realize how much power that really is. It Even in today's age, 1,000 horsepower is a lot, and it's not an easy stepping stone. And the transmission has to be on point to hold the 1,000 plus horsepower. Um, that includes every single billet part you can get for a 68 RFE, all the way from the pump to the drive hubs to the center support to the drums to if there was an output shaft, I'm sure they would have them. Um, output shafts in these things are pretty strong. I've seen a handful of them strip splines and a handful of them like just break the shaft. Is not common, even at this power level. So the 1000 series is pretty much an all-out build. The extreme series is our next step up. That's going to be you're not going to be driving that down the street, right? So that's going to be something that is set up just for a competition vehicle. Um, that thing is what we have in here. So it has pressure sensors everywhere. It takes data logging capabilities. It takes custom tuning software. Um, all the other ones that I mentioned, the 800, the 900, the 1000, can all work on factory controls. We have multiple customers out there with those 1000 series that are doing dirt drags. We have people with 800 series doing dirt drags, sled pulls. We have them all over the country, and it's I see a lot on the forums of people saying, "Oh, go ahead and 48 swap it." Uh, the 68, in my opinion, like if I was going to um, talk to you about 48 swapping your truck, which we used to do a lot of, before the 68s were, honestly figured out, that was the option to go to. But if I could stack up, a 48 RE overdrive and show you what a 68 RFE overdrive housing looks like, and actually give you the figures of apply force and piston area, I think you would maybe change your mind, honestly. There is a ton of friction and a ton of clamp force, and it all comes down to having the right build, having the right tuner to get that clutch on and not slipping in and out of gear, and getting the converter locked up as fast as possible and keeping it cool. Obviously, the harder you are on it, the cleaner we have to keep the fluid. So when that fluid starts getting particles and pieces in it, and it starts getting into valves and solenoids, it will make the valve bores bigger. It's going to start sandblasting those valve bores, which is the pretty common issue of what we see with the SSVs. On this specific truck, it is a 68 RFE, I promise. We don't use all 6 gears. So in competition, you can do anything. But for 6 gear exchanges at this kind of power level would take longer for our gear exchanges to happen than it would take for us to make a run. So the gears we use are very similar to our manual valve body. Um, we use the factory second gear, third gear, and fourth gear. So we never go into any overdrive gears, but we do use the overdrive clutch. That being said, we do lock this thing up out of the hole. I mean, I can lock it as soon as I let off my trans brake button. The trans brake itself has netted us one low 130 60 foots, which is very fast for especially a 68 RFE. Your typical, high horsepower street truck is probably a 150s at very best. 150s to 2 second 60 foots is typical, what you would see on this. One of the reasons we went to the second gear start was the known sprag, right? Like that wasn't the big issue if I could get gear ratio out of it. So a 3-to-1 gear ratio in first gear just isn't plausible for us. Like that is way too numerically high of a gear. which it would be like us leaving in 4 low. Like it just wouldn't work. We would burn the tires off super fast. So we chose to do the 182 first gear um, for this and our manual valve bodies. That also got us away from sprag failures. If we did tire hop or something like that, being able to time the shifts, we physically had to take the data in, and we have an ongoing and offcoming pressures that we have to overlap so there's no flare in between. That was one we've worked on for the last 2 years to make the manual valve body a thing. 'Cause it's considered a clutch on clutch transmission. So that means that when this clutch comes off, this clutch has to be coming on to take over its duty. If two clutches are off at the same time, technically it goes into first gear, which gives you a flare, which is why your RPMs go way up. And then you have obviously the bind. So if you get them overlap too much, where you have full pressure in this clutch and full pressure in this clutch at the same time, obviously that's like hitting a trans brake going down the road. That is forward and reverse at the same time. That is no good at all. It is it takes out clutches really quick. So that crucial part of the clutch on clutch is everything that your factory TCM does. So that's why it has a quick learn procedure, and that's why it's consistently learning. So it knows as your transmission wears how fast to speed up or slow down each individual solenoid. It's very, very smart. This truck itself and the manual valve bodies, we have been able to get away from the learning side, and it is a 2, 3, 4, and 6 gear. That's our options that we have in it. Drives very, very similar to the 48RE, um, as well as that jump in gear ratio from third to fourth gear on 48 is the same type of jump we have from fourth gear on a 68 to sixth gear. It is a little bit of a jump. Um, if you're not loaded and you're just driving down the road, it's very easy. It seems normal. If you are loaded with something, which we never recommend pulling a big load with a competition truck of any sort. So but I have done it. We all have, I'm sure. Put a skid steer on. I just was going up the road and just to see how it felt. Did a fourth gear to sixth gear shift, just to see how it was, and it will do it. It's not it's not the best shift that you could possibly think of. It's very similar to the 48, where it drops RPMs quite a ways, loads the truck, hard, and when you start loading trucks down at low RPM like that, that's when you have bad things happen. That's when rods exit the block and you start smoking out the exhaust and stuff like that. So we always just tell our customers that we want the RPM up higher, especially in high performance stuff. If you're out there sled pulling or whatever, we don't want you don't want the RPMs, and we don't want the RPMs to drop low to peak torque. That's when you start seeing rods escape the block, motors completely chucking out of vehicles. I have been in that situation. Here at WP Developments, we have installation options for our customers as well. There's some people that, make the investment for the 68 RFE and they really just want us to put it in for them. We have that option available to you guys. We also have the option of you guys, we build it, we ship it out, you install it, you put your old transmission core back in a crate, and you get it back to us and receive your core refund. Um, that is another option. We do not frown upon that. I get a lot of questions about, well, what if this shop installs it wrong? Is it still under warranty? Or, if I install it myself, will you guys still warranty it? And the answer is yes. We have been building transmissions long enough that we know if it's an installation error, lack of fluid level, stacked the converter in the pump, which means you did not get your converter all the way in before you put it up in the truck and put thrust against the pump. All of that stuff is pretty typical, or a broken sensor, pigtail, or something like that, causing a line pressure issue or a shifting issue. All of that stuff is really easy to determine. So installing it yourself in your garage or having a shop that you guys trust to put it in, we are not afraid to, have that happen. Um, The warranty on them, as I said, we have a 2-year unlimited mile workmanship warranty. Um, that is under a resource tab on our website. If you guys have any questions about that, I'll kind of brief it here, but it gets in more detail on that. But it is a very common warranty across the transmission industry. Workmanship, I get a lot of questions on. So workmanship is something that we possibly failed on upon install. So if we cut a lip seal, um, we broke a bolt off or didn't get a bolt tightened or something in that nature, something we did it upon assembly. Um, and we'll say we work well with our customers. That's one of my big things is try to be there for our customers. And if they are having issues, let's get it figured out and resolved as fast as we can. Especially with high performance stuff. I mean, no matter whose transmission you buy, there's when you're in that kind of program yourself and you have all this horsepower, there is failure points, whether it's in the engine, your rear differentials, your drive shafts, your transmission, turbos. We all experience failures, and how somebody's going to back it and support it, and who's going to be there for you to help you through it. That's what you really need to look at. So the warranty is, like I said, 2-year unlimited mile um, workmanship. So that means if we mess it up upon assembly, um, something like that, that is covered under warranty. Now, all of our customers, if they did have an issue or something, we were instant to get right on it and try to figure out a conclusion and see if it was upon install or low fluid or what may have happened. And that was a big push for us doing our torque converters in house as well. So we could sit down and do failure analysis if we had a failure and see how we could make it better, or if it was something driving related, or if that was manufacturing related, and kind of get a game plan of how we can make these things better and not have as many failures. Um, Obviously, the 68, we have all been on that train where we're trying to make these things the best we can, and we have surpassed what time it took the 48 to get to the level this thing is. So as surpassed, I mean, we cut the time down we tremendously. So it took us years and years and years of development to get a 48 RE to hold, 2000 2500 horsepower. Now it seems like everybody and their brother can do it because us back in the day failed multiple, multiple, multiple times and got a recipe that works, and we shared it with the group of diesel enthusiasts. So with the technology and stuff we have nowadays, we were able to get a handle on this 68 RFE a lot faster. Anything with technology in it that we can sit there and data log and review and see it under stress, we can really get a grasp on things really quick. If you would have said something 5 years ago to somebody about a 68 RFE holding 2,000 horsepower, they would have told you you're crazy. Um, I might have even told you were crazy. But, in the last 5 years, the amount of research and development that has went beyond and above has got it to where it really doesn't necessarily make sense to do the 48 swap. We have options that can hold or outstand, especially in the overdrive gears, what a 48 can do, and I'm a firm believer in that. Converter wise, the 48 and the 68 is very, very similar. So if you could hold, I have personally held 2400 2500 horsepower with a 48 RE triple disc converter. I have no doubt in my mind we can do the same exact thing, and we have times that show that we have almost crested that 2000 horsepower mark with a 68 without failure. So, you know, it is evolving, and it has came leaps and bounds to what it was. And, I can only foresee the future getting better with them. The last part of this video, I wanted to kind of concentrate on the truck here. That's probably got all your attention rather than looking at me, and kind of tell you a little bit about it. I got this truck in 2017. We built it for a customer, had them at the UCC qualifier, in 2018. Um, we ended up with the truck, got out of racing. Um, so we decided to use it as an R&D rig. So we've been through a couple a couple engines. I love doing the no prep thing, but with family and kids nowadays, I've kind of slowed down on that and stick to more of a prep thing. I get a wild hair every once in a while, and still try to go on some slick surfaces and stuff just to make sure I don't lose that you know deal. But I wanted to touch base on some of the engine setup. This particular engine is a Hamilton solid block. It's a 6.4 liter. Um, the transmission obviously is WP Development 68 RFE. Like I've said earlier in the video, we have an SCS billet gearbox that is our transfer case that is remote mounted. We also have forward front, rear 9-inch axles. The fueling on this is all done by S&S Diesel. They have done the fueling as well as we bought our Motec stuff through them and they support us at the track. Tuning help comes from Hardway and S&S as a joint effort to help us kind of learn and we do a lot of the tuning ourselves. But if we have questions and stuff there, those two guys are on it. Uh, the turbo, we have two setups. Currently, we are on what I consider our small setup. It's a stainless diesel S485. I have had that since 2019, and I have beat the living snot out of it, and I cannot break it. It is my setup that I use for lower horsepower, more power manageable. If I'm going to a no prep race or something that's slick and I need to pedal it, the recovery time is a lot faster than my GT55. But we do have an 88 millimeter from stainless diesel with the billet center cartridge, dual ball bearings for this truck that we do run here and there occasionally if we're wanting to make some sort of record pass or something and make horsepower. But we try to keep the motor alive more than 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 the and when we bolt that big turbo on, the motor is probably at its capabilities with the solid block. This thing is probably the heaviest Pro Street truck. It's around 4,800 pounds with me in it. Um, on top of the turbo, we obviously have a lot of nitrous. So our nitrous guys are Nitrous Express. We run all of their bottles, their fittings, their solenoids. They have been awesome to work with. When we weren't on a Motec ECU, we ran their Max 5. I do a lot of tuning for a lot of diesel racers on the Max 5. A couple more people we have here are Precision Racing Suspensions, PRS. They do all of our shock work for us. They have been amazing. They nailed it on the first try. I don't have any complaints about it. Anytime we are in our off season, we take them off and we ship them off to them, make sure they get a good, clean bill of health. Um, Throughout the entire truck for liquids is one of our great sponsors, Hot Shot Secret. They're very big on our back window. They have been an amazing asset to our team, whether it's some type of custom fluid we needed in the transmission area, or keeping the engine alive, or testing diesel fuel additives out for them, and looking at the data, all the way down to our transfer cases with their fluids. And I I don't believe in snake oils, but when I have raw data myself that I have collected in front of me that shows actual performance done, and it's not just me, it's between all of the racers. We do back to back comparisons with the leading brands, and Hot Shot Secret has outdone everybody I have ever tried. And they're at the race. If we ever need any help, they're right there to help us, and that support is just absolutely amazing. Ray Bestis Powertrain, that is another huge sponsor for us. Those guys are somewhat local. We work with them a lot in the R&D side, failure analysis. testing new friction designs, um, designing new products, reaction plates, clutch thicknesses, clutch steels, stuff like that. They have been an amazing asset to us. Another huge company that we cannot thank enough is Sonex. Sonex is a huge industry that is industry leading in transmission parts, high performance, daily driver, stuff like that. If they have anything or that they have wanted tested. We have thrown it in this with no questions asked, and it has, even in testing, outperformed anything we ever expected. On top of that, some of their engineers I'm very good friends with. We spend a lot of time on the phone together. We look at diagrams, whether it's hydraulic fluid or hydraulic flow diagrams, and see how each individual land is pertaining to what issues we're fighting or what it might be. We could not do it without those guys. Another good sponsor we have is ECU Masters. Um, we run their dash and what they call their PMU 16. The PMU is a power distribution module, so it basically takes a positive battery voltage in, and we program it to put voltage out to different things. We use it for multiple different things. We can code our own, processes and stuff like that. Their dash is fully configurable. It's very cool. You're able to put logos, and I can have screens pop up when I'm on the trans brake. At one point in time, this thing has had Dale Earnhardt pop up when I push my trans brake button, and he's smiling, giving the thumbs up. So stuff like that, is very cool. It wasn't the easiest, but obviously sometimes the easiest isn't the best. We're able to, put on our screen what RPM limiter our ECU set at and display that on the screen, which makes it very easy for me to know where I'm at on the tune level. On top of, we have a individual setting for power. So it's fuel quantity, which in my mind is power. How much power do I want to put down? So I can click my knob. It's like a CSP 6 or 5 switch or your Duramax switch on the fly switch. It's just like that. And it displays how much fuel quantity is max on there. And then we were able to program all that in as well as my launch limiter. So without that, that was a huge deal for us, for me being able to be comfortable knowing when I hit my button, what am I at and what kind of fuel level am I at. That way I can know that this thing's going to go down the track with the tune up we have loaded in it. So that's that's some of the great sponsors: S&S, stainless diesel, precision racing suspensions, um, nitrous express, hot shots secret, Sonics, Raybestos, all those people, and even more, our crew here at WP Developments, we all pack up for days at a time and go racing, and it's probably more work than working here. So it's a lot of no sleeps, a lot of no eats, and a lot of stress, honestly, making the next rounds. I couldn't do it without everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a little different rather than just actual hands-on product stuff. It's kind of telling you, what we have going on in the racing world, the high performance world. That we can obviously install your stuff here in house. Give us a like, subscribe, and wait for the next one because it's coming.